Okay, we are live with the Merge Marketing Podcast. We're live right now on the Merge Facebook page, as well as the Digital Marketing for Travel Professionals Facebook group. Thank you so much for watching us. Thanks for watching the playback. We're excited to have you here today, and we have an exciting guest. Mike Ulmer is gonna dive in with us on traditional forms of advertising, specifically newspapers, and we're gonna talk a little bit about modern forms of advertising as well. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to kick it to today's podcast episode. Take the conch, Dave. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the Merge Marketing Podcast. Today's episode features another incredible entrepreneur and content creator. Mike Ulmer enjoyed a 25-year career in newspapering and worked for the Woodstock Sentinel-Review, the Hamilton Spectator, the Hockey News, Southam News, National Post, and as a sports columnist for 7 years at the Toronto Sun. He has written 12 books. His opinion pieces have appeared in all 4 Toronto-based daily newspapers, the Sun, the Globe and Mail, the National Post, and the Toronto Star. Mike, welcome to our show today.
Thank you for having me, guys. Just a real treat.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been talking about this for quite a while, you and I, Mike. We've been in different networking groups in the past and have remained quite close. So I'm glad we finally got a chance to do this today.
My pleasure as well. Great fun, Dave. You're one of the good ones.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. So I guess
I'm not sure about Jay. I'm not sure about.
We're not sure.
Yeah, come on. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No worries. So I think the first place I'd like to start is just kind of getting a career background or a career backstory of how you got started in the newspaper industry and what your experience was like.
Such a different animal then, one of the profound changes in the business is that there was it was almost like a baseball minor league. There was there was A ball and there's double A and triple A and now. Then the majors. And so my ascent was just that way. So I started at a little weekly newspaper for 6 years in Glencoe, Ontario, which is just nothing there, nothing except a newspaper and about 1,500 people. And at that time you could go there and you could be lousy for 6 years. And I certainly was. And then I got hopefully a little better. And then I went to a newspaper in Woodstock, a small newspaper, a daily newspaper, which was really sort of a big jump. And then I just started working my way up. It was really a traditional apprenticeship in every sense. You went to a bigger, more powerful, more prestigious place, and you got better in your trade, and hopefully, and then you finally made it to the big leagues if you were lucky, and I guess I was lucky. So it was really a long apprenticeship, about 15 years just to kind of get where I wanted to. A different animal that exists today. Today, those papers really don't exist in anything but name. And the place where you want to get like say the Toronto Star would have had say 5 people covering the Leafs, so 4 people covering the Leafs, which was my goal, covering the Maple Leafs, which I got to. But at the time would have had 5 people. Now they have 1, and they're that paper was sold for $50 million, which $60 million for Nordstar, which really probably doesn't even cover the real estate. So they lost $20 million. That was their last quarterly loss report, and their losses could be significantly more than that. The industry looks really dark, and this is how progress looks if you're on the wrong side of the disruption equation.
Yeah, and that's definitely something we're going to dive into deeper in a little bit. But I guess just to get a sense of your background and how you evolved to be covering the Toronto Maple Leafs, when you first got into the industry back in Woodstock, what were you writing about? Was it just you were covering anything? Was it investigative journalism? What are we looking at?
It was everything. It was everything, which was a great sort of apprenticeship. So you learn to be a cop reporter. You learn to go to council meetings, which were, as exciting as it sounds, Public Utility Commission meetings. Boy, you can't beat a good PUC meeting. I was lucky to avoid some of the really hard ends of it, because sometimes you have to go cover very, very sad things, car accidents and people passing on. And so that was one part of it I never really wanted to do. I was lucky I didn't have to do a whole lot of it. But it's a great education. Journalism is a lousy place to be right now, but a great place to be from. Really a dynamite place because really when you're a journalist, you learn that you can ask anybody anything. And that's not a secret. And that's true of everyone, not just journalists. One of the remarkable things about the business is that you find out how people will always answer your questions. It doesn't matter if you have a press pass or not. If you go up to someone you're interested in and display, obviously, courtesy, and more than a passing understanding of their business, anyone will stop and talk to you and explain how things are. Anyone. It's just human nature.
Did you find it? Did you find it to be a challenge working in a small town where everybody kind of knows each other, and you know, you're cognizant of the stories that you're writing about particular people and the pushback you may get from that? Did you experience a lot of that working for a small town?
You know, it's funny. My greatest memory of this little town in Woodstock was there was a young girl. Her name was Tracy Knight, and every little town, every year or so has a shining light they send out into the world. You know, it's that girl that was the homecoming queen and the lifeguard, the head lifeguard, and the girl that everyone sort of at the high school knew and looked up to. And her name was Tracy Knight. My God, this is many years ago. And Tracy Queens, and she got in the back of a motorcycle, and she was gone within 2 weeks of her leaving. And that little town was devastated. And I walked across, because we delivered our own newspapers, and I walked across and delivered the newspapers to the little Nectals grocery store there. And that place just stopped, and everybody was reading the newspaper. And I realized then that this was actually a really, really important job. I might have been making $185 a week or whatever it was, but I was that conduit to that really, really tough story. And so at this time, every little, like if you had 40 people in Middlemiss, Ontario, they had a correspondence, or every little social thing was picked up in the paper. So it really was community in the truest sense. And so, you know, that was in a time where the word had value. You know, one of the funny things to me about the word community is everyone says that, you know, is there a homeless community? I don't know.
Rob? Yeah.
Because the word has been stretched in so many ways, in so many different ways. It's groups, it's things, it's different people with different interests. When I started in the business, little newspapers were called community newspapers, and they were truly, truly that. The community was a geographic term, not a social one.
It's interesting because, I mean, now it's all about being a social one. Like Facebook alone, like you probably see this on Facebook, where there's such an emphasis on groups. And that's essentially what Facebook's trying to do, is trying to bucket everybody into these little groups, whether it's the Milton Mummies or the Guelph Dads, or, you know, or whether it's, you know, Toronto Maple Leaf fans, whatever it is, that's all they're trying to do, is just trying to pigeonhole groups of people now. And it's quite effective, because really it's filtering out all the noise that people see in the newspapers or in their news feeds all day long. And it's, you know, segmenting the things to people in terms of what they're interested in, which I think is important.
And Jay, that's a really great point, because that's really how an area that Facebook has thrived, and where, you know, legacy media, as it's called now, cannot compete. It's just not a fair fight in so many ways. And that's a great example. So if you look at The Athletic as a sports website, it costs like $11. And there are 4 people writing about the Leafs with video. If I want to find out what's going on in Minnesota, there are 4 people writing about the hockey team. There are 4 people writing about the football team. There are national columnists. There are the cream of the crop. They're available to me every day. If I want to find out what's going on with the Maple Leafs, I can go to Pension Plan Puppets, which is a free service, or I can buy the Toronto Star, which will have 1 story, and I'll have to pay for it. So it's that segmentation of interest, and Facebook, of course, has pioneered it, that has changed the media landscape so much. And, you know, it's not progress is neither for the bad nor for the good. It just is what it is, as they say. No one in newspapers was crying when they were putting somebody else out of business. It's just the way it goes.
Do you have a sense of how this came to be? Because, I mean, like, how was it that it's an industry and some of the biggest companies in our country, like the Toronto Star, were so oblivious and weren't able to adapt and be the leaders in what is the new media? I just don't understand, because like they would they not have had every resource available to them to be able to do that? Was it ignorance? What is your sense?
Well, I don't think it was ignorance. I think we knew that this was an industry that was in great difficulty, in peril for years and years and years and years. And, so I guess I'll make the analogy of horses. And David, you and I spoke of this yet. Somewhere in the late 1800s, someone did a mathematical projection and found that that by the year 1920, New York City would have, horse manure 20 feet high up to the second story. And what happened was that cars replaced horses in the teens and 20s and 30s. And so that was no longer applicable. It didn't matter what you did, it sold horses. You were beat. There's no way. You could be as arrogant or as humble as you wanted to. If this change comes and completely devastates your industry, there's nothing you can do. The Star tried a paywall, then they went off the paywall, then went back to the paywall. The Star, 140-year-old business, and it's been devastated like every other newspaper has been devastated. But it's not like they didn't see it coming. It's not like they were arrogant. There was just no solution to the problem. If someone is going to go out and give what you have and give it free in a better form that speaks better to the consumer, an unlimited form, an unlimited flavor, and you have vanilla, it doesn't matter whether you're it doesn't matter what you do, you're beat. So let me yeah.
But what I don't understand is, yeah, Facebook came about, provided a free platform for people to post news and post whatever they want for free and become basically their own media outlet. But
right.
Agencies like ours exist, and we're going after the exact same clients and the exact same customers that the Toronto Star would be going after to basically take their business and start advertising for them on digital. Why would the Toronto Star or any of these other big companies like Metroland Media not have seen that or not have done that? And I see them doing it now, but even still, like, they're so far behind with so much money and opportunity. I just don't get it.
Can I add to that before you hop in there, Mike? In addition to that, I have seen ads from the National Post targeting me to try to sell me digital marketing programs and courses. So there are some news outlets that are trying to leverage digital in a different way and trying to be unique with their approach to the market. However, I think there was a huge opportunity missed here, because you have the likes of resources like the Huffington Post, and there's online sources that aren't as reputable as the Toronto Star. That the Toronto Star has this platform with this reputable name that they can put stuff out there and people will believe it. That if they were able to conform to digital, and like David said, and partner with a company, a digital marketing company, it just would be a huge opportunity and be able to provide that value that their clients are looking for.
Well, let me tell you what the biggest news sites are. I'm just going to look away for a second. The news sites are Yahoo News. It has 175 unique visitors every week. Google News, CNN, the Huffington Post. Number 5 is the New York Times. So the mighty New York Times has 45% of what Yahoo News has. And there's a lot of smart people at the New York Times. and if there was anyone that was going to figure out how to make this thing run, it would probably be the New York Times. And yet they are been laughed by. Yahoo News hasn't existed for 20 years. New York Times has been existed for 150 years. I don't think it's that we didn't see it coming. There was just no solution to it. If your commodity is so here's kind of the way newspapers always work. The cover price of a newspaper only covered the paper and the ink, right? There was no way that covered the actual expense of having reporters and all the other attendant expenses. So, but they had all sorts of revenue streams. They had, classified ads. Classified ads, was really lucrative, right? What's the classified ad of choice today? Kijiji, right? Where's Craigslist? It's Kijiji now. Okay. Oh yeah, you lost that. Okay. So what about display advertising that's targeted? I mean, newspapers are by nature not targeted ads. It's just whoever is interested in the news that day that will buy it or whatever. And by the way, by 2025, only 2 households in 100 a daily newspaper delivered there. 100. So what's it? Well, okay. Well, you have display advertising. Well, no, you can go there and actually pinpoint what that person had for breakfast that day. So you can't compete with them for that kind of thing. Okay. So what's the other commodity we have? Well, we have news. Okay. But people don't want to pay for news anymore. So we all have all these free websites. Oh, how about opinion? Oh man, there's opinion everywhere. You can't go anywhere without getting an opinion. And when you mentioned the Huffington Post has a great business model. They don't pay their reporters. Right? All those reporters are building their own brands, quote, building their own brands. So the Huffington, is a very lucrative endeavor, but they found a way to actually to get people to work without paying. So that's a great business model, but it's probably not going to work at the Toronto Star.
I feel there's just a massive pivot that would have needed to happen at the Toronto Star to become that type of a model and replicate that type of a model.
But you're in the horse business, Jay, if you're in the horse business, there's nothing you do when people go to cars. Either sell all your horses and invest in cars, or
you have the likes of companies like Lennox who have been building air conditioners for over a century that have had to evolve with the times and recreate new products and change and let go of the past and the past methods of doing things, but they have the name.
People, it's not that matter the name. People need air conditioning. No one has invented something other than air conditioning. Like if there was a little box that came in and into your house and was the size of a shoebox, Lennox would be in deep shit. But they're not, because it doesn't exist.
Yeah, well, people do need their news, right? People do need their news, and they don't just need any news. They don't want fake news. They want news from reputable sources, right? So
yeah. So the other thing is, though, because what happens in any business is when your profits go down, what do? The body begins to eat itself, right? You cut yourself back to stay in business. So you stop cutting off your limbs. So as I mentioned, whereas the Toronto Star used to have, 4 or 5 people covering the Maple Leafs, now there's one guy who's on the beat, and so let's just go that for a second. And even how that's been impacted. So your other news forms, say like TSN, which didn't exist, when I started. TSN, so they need pundits, right? They need opinion guys. So most sports reporters are working for TSN and the Toronto Star. Dave Feschuk works for both. Steve Brunt, who's just a wonderful writer, he quit the Globe and Mail 15 years ago. And we all sat around going, Steve, what the hell's wrong with you? Working at the Globe and Mail. Why would you go to Sportsnet? Well, guess what? Steve, as always, was ahead of the curve. So they poach even the people that get pretty good at newspapers. They still poach them and turn them into pundits. So even getting talent is their ability to do that has been decimated as well. So not only do you have the revenue stream under assault, but you have the talent, which is your commodity, going to work for everybody else, because that's where the money is and that's where the growth is.
Yeah. So, transitioning a little bit, because you did reference earlier the Toronto Star sale, which was how you and I got on this topic the other day, because I had been talking with my dad about it. And just for context, the Toronto Star recently sold for $52 million to a private company run by 2 successful entrepreneurs. And I'll let you kind of share your thoughts on one, the $52 million valuation, and then 2, they're planning to take the company private. So, is there a chance that the company can be saved? Like, what are these guys thinking that they're going to be able to do with this big monster?
Well, it's lovely that it's been taken over by people who aren't from the newspaper business. That's the first thing.
But it sounds like they want to preserve the same values and the same, processes,
Well, the Star is an interesting beast. The Star was founded in the late 1800s, 1892, I think, because it was a strike newspaper. It was published during a strike at another newspaper, and it was always, from its first days, a liberal, left-leaning newspaper. And it was called the Atkinson principles, and those were social justice principles. And the Atkinson's principles were sort of enshrined. And when they sold it to the 5 families, which sounds kind of sinister, those things were enshrined. The Atkinson, now the Star, is always prided itself as being, the purveyor of left-wing values, which really gets old. But it's been their shtick. It's been their corner. The Star was no more inherently just in its treatment of the world than the Globe was, or the National Post was, or the Sun. It's just that was their angle. The Atkinson principles. And so when the new buyers came in, I think it's for $60 million, Dave. They started Woodstock to be accepted by the board, which it was. They say they're going to adhere to these Atkinson principles of social justice, but this is just window washing. They're going to adhere to whatever principles make the Star a profitable endeavor, in which they should, because that's the best way to keeping people employed.
What's the background on this company? Are there's entrepreneurs, investors? Are they invested in other digital assets? David or Mike, do you guys know?
I don't know. I don't know very much about.
Interesting.
Yeah. Oh, I thought maybe you'd know a little bit more about them, because just from doing the research that I didn't get any sense what the plan with the company was. Are they still going to be producing print? Are they going to move more to digital? I got no sense of it, just that they were going to maintain these Atkinson principles, and that they love the reputation that the Toronto Star has, and they want to be able to preserve that, and blah, blah, blah. But it just, it doesn't make any sense to me, even though it was pennies on the dollar, as you referenced before.
Yeah. I mean, the people, so when AW Record in the Spectator was up for sale, the offers that were made were way, way, way past the $60 million. I mean, it's one Yonge Street is worth $60 million, which is the headquarters. It could just be a real estate play, because if you have a building so the Spectator building here in Hamilton was sold for $20 million. Think about that for a second. They sold the building for $20 million. They sold a Star in 70 different publications and 6 different newspapers in Welland, Niagara Falls, Peterborough, Kitchener-Waterloo, Hamilton. I think I'm forgetting one. And so maybe it's just a real estate play for these guys. It could very well be. Whatever it is, it is pennies, as you say, David. It's pennies on the dollar, and it just really speaks to where the business is now. But hey, this is progress. This is the way the world works. It's as I said, no one, everyone in Alberta is crying about the oil industry, but nobody in Alberta was worried about the cod fisheries. And the fishermen in Atlantic Canada weren't worried about Ontario's manufacturing sector when it went down the tubes. Every industry has this happen to it, and it's as you guys say, it's adapt or die. But I think just because you're dying doesn't mean you didn't try, and doesn't mean you're aware of it, of it coming over the horizon. But as I said before, if you're in the horse business and cars are coming, there's no option. Either sell the horses or eventually go broke and go into chaos. And maybe that's it. When you say that, Dave, maybe that's what they should have done. Maybe they should have divested themselves of all the newspapers and become a strict online media company. Maybe that was the way. But when you've been in business for 170 years, doing one thing, it's pretty hard to say, Cadbury, we want you to get chocolate. Okay. We just don't see it working anymore. We want you to be in consumer electronics. I'm not sure Cadbury's going to go with it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So, I mean, what's your best guess on when you think newspapers are going to cease to exist entirely? Then we talking 5 years? We talking 10 years? I mean, are some of the big ones still going to remain, but all the little guys are going to go out? What do you think? I
don't see them really existing in anything other than online form, and then they can't charge. A paywall won't work. The New York Times can do a paywall, right? But clearly the Toronto Sun can't. It's just if you have to become a news service. You're so right, Jay. The only thing you really have left is the banner. So exploit the banner and find a way to create space in the digital landscape. And find an innovative way to use in terms of a newspaper delivered to your door. Like I say, by 2025, 2030, maybe it is, 2 out of every 100 households will take a newspaper. I mean, way more households than I think Elvis is alive.
It's crazy. It's crazy to think that one day I may tell my grandkids I used to deliver papers for the Toronto Sun, and they're going to be like, Daddy, Granddaddy, what are you talking about? Delivering.
I can tell my grandkids that I was in the Toronto Sun, and they'll still say the same thing.
Yeah. 5 o'clock in the morning. I was up putting in the flyers into the papers and delivering door to door, right?
I like to think I'm not responsible for the decline of newspapers, by the way. I like to think that it wasn't just me, that I was in business that drove itself into the ground, that there are other factors other than me, but the facts may speak otherwise.
So how has Mike Ulmer adapted to the situation?
Oh, that's such a really interesting question. Because really, in a sense, I'm sort of that story in microcosm. It's very easy for me to speak in broad strokes. But so when I worked for a newspaper, this was my life. I would go to events, I'd talk to people, I'd write it, and then I would do the same thing the next day. The analogy I always made was that I was like on a desert island, and then a plane would fly over, and they would drop a parchment in a bottle with a pencil and a cork in the end of it. And I would fish the bottle out of the water, and I would write whatever I wanted to write on it. I'd stick the pencil and the parchment back in there. I'd stick the cork in the end. I'd throw it into the sea, and then I'd wait for the next plane. That was my gig. Right? And of course, nothing could be further from the truth now. And so I'm sort of the accidental entrepreneur. And it's taken me years to sort of figure out what it is I want to do. And I like what I'm doing very much right now. But like anyone, it's a really interesting adjustment. You have to develop a whole new set of skills. But the thing, as I said earlier about newspapering, is it's a lot place to be, but it's a great place to be from. So what I'm doing now is I'm operating a book writing service, and I've written a lot of books. So for small businesses, for say business coaches and stuff like that, we can write them a 5,000 word book for $5,000. There's a lot of people who want to give a gift to their parents in terms of a legacy gift, something that they can show their kids and their kids' kids. And that company is called Forever Books, and I run that with a partner as well. And another avenue of books I'm doing is a book with people who have a great story to tell and have lots of social media. And then what happens is I help them write the book, and then they choose charities, and the sale of those books go to those charities. So the person gets to tell a great story, share it with the world, and share it with their families. And the charities are the benefactors out of that too, beneficiaries out of that. So the question is really a great one. So I worked for, the first thing I did is I went to work for the Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, and I worked there for 7 years, and they were wonderful to work for. And I really enjoyed working for them. And it was really nice to see, in politics, they call it cross door, to see what it was like inside a sports conglomerate, how it worked. And I was there for 7 years, and that was super. And now I'm sort of figuring this out, and it's been a lot of fun. But boy, when you reinvent yourself, like you guys are young, I'm like 60. I'm so old. So it presents real challenges to someone who's not in your cohort to be engaged and to love what they're doing and to not resent change, to embrace it, because my skills are very unique. You know, as Liam Neeson said, a very unique set of skills. His was killing people. But the ability to string together a sentence and to weave a cogent theme through 10,000 words is one that most people don't have. And so in a way, my skills are now more in demand than ever. And when papers close down, when people get laid off, I always call them, I say, don't worry, it's going to be okay, because I know you two guys, you can't write a lick. And I can.
Hey, we went to university. What about all those research papers we were tasked with doing?
The first thing you need to do is stop writing like you did in university. That's the first thing you need to do.
It's so true. Yeah.
So I kind of want to hit that rabbit hole just for a second, Mike, in terms of, let's say I'm a small business owner and I want to position myself as an authority. And one of the ways to obviously do that is to write a book. So maybe you can, without going, this podcast episode is not about, for publishing or writing a book, but what are those first initial steps that, an entrepreneur would need to do if they want to write a book?
That's a really great thought. Writing a book is agony. It's really, really hard. I've written millions of words, and I will do anything to avoid doing it. It's really hard. People who say they love to write don't write for money, for the fun of it. if you write for money, which is what I do, you have to really work at it. So the first thing I would advise on writing is it's not going to be easy, and the book you're writing is not the book you're writing. The book is different. To think of it as an organic that all exists, and you're much creating it, you're uncovering it. And the process of writing a book, writing a good, really depends a lot of soul searching, a lot of great research, a lot of work in. So like it can't be 95%. Chris Rock had a thing about police. He says there are some jobs that you can't just do 95%. Like American Airlines, 5% of our pilots going to crash on the side of there are some. Chris Rock says no. You have to have with police. You have to have 170 bad apples. You can't do mistakes in a book. You're alone every 5,000. That's really hard. And someone will jump up as soon as you make a mistake and say so. A great book is a real challenge. Now, that said, it's a great way of understanding yourself, your business. The journey itself is terrific. And you're a much better person for having written it, let alone having this thing to show people. But man, it's hard. My advice, if you're going to, is get some help. And I'm not saying that to be serving. I'm saying that because it's hard to do. If you're going to do it yourself, then spend a lot of time in the design phase of it. Figure out exactly what it is you want to say it. And figure out what makes you different. No one ever got rich being the same as everybody. Figure out what it is about your process that makes it different. There are 3 kinds of stories that you need. You need to tell your foundations how you got to be the guy that you are, person that you are. Excuse me. You need to tell what it is you do now, and you need to how it's different. All those 3 stories are interconnected. So story number 3, how it's different, have to go back to story number 1, different. And then how you made those processes with number 2. So you have those 3 pillars. What makes you different than everybody else, how you got to be that person, how you turn that into your business. So that would be the advice I would give people that were starting their own. The other thing is it's really hard. It's going to take a long time. You're going to think you're there. It's like Sisyphus pushing a boulder up am I making this sound good? It's like Sisyphus pushing a boulder up a mountain. But you can do it if you're really, really good. So good luck to you. If you need some help, give me a shout.
You know what? And Mike, you were breaking up a little bit and there. It was a little spotty, but no, it's okay, because I think this topic is one I'd want you to come back for a future episode, because I really think this topic we can dive into like a full 30 minutes to an hour just talking about the process that it takes for a lot of people to publish a book. I've thought about it. I'm sure David's thought about it as well. I mean, everybody has their own story and journey, and I'd really like to get into that in another episode with you. But that what you were saying there, because it was spotty, it reminded me of that scene in Forrest Gump where he's up there on stage saying all that stuff, and then at the end he says, hey. Like, all right, because there's a lot of goodies in there. We're just getting little pieces of.
Hey, do you want to do it again? I know you're doing a podcast. Do you want me to go on with the same rant again, or are you okay?
Well, your actually connection's really good right now, and if you don't mind just going over that one more time, that would be awesome. Sure. We'll just have Krista; she'll cut it up, so she'll edit the episode. So if you don't mind,
she's the best. Well, what was the question?
How to write a book?
How did this all start? Writing a book is hard. It's and the thing about writing a book is that the book that you write, the one thing you know is that the book that you end up with is not the book you started to write. Every book is about something than what you think it is. And every book is a life form on its own that you uncover. You don't create it, you uncover it. And you do that through thorough self-examination and looking at what worked, what didn't work. But it's hard. Writing is really hard because as soon as you get better, you realize you don't want to do the thing you just did. So that means that you have to be better at it. And so you can never cheat the reader. So it never gets easier. It only ever gets harder. You get better, but it only ever gets harder. And the process of being honest with yourself and then having someone critique the work, fix the work, edit the work, it can't have anything wrong with it. If a book has 2 things within 10,000 words, lost all its credibility. You get about 5,000 words per week. So writing the book out, talking to people, it's just fantastic advice, but it's really, really hard well on your own. Now you can barf it all, and you can send it to Rev, make a manuscript, and zip it all together there, and you can be done in 2 days if you want. But you got a book that no one's going to benefit from. This is your one chance to tell your grandkids what you're about. Don't screw this up.
I like it. No, that's great. That's great advice. And I mean, I think books for the most part will continue to remain a popular source of media in the written form, but I could be wrong on that. But I think, yeah, I've definitely given some thought to it, but it's, from what I hear, excruciating, and it takes a lot of time, and it's not easy. And actually, we were talking about this the other day at my BNI meeting, ironically, about basically having a book and how it can separate you from everyone else in your industry. Because essentially, the example was you have 3 real estate agents. 2 of them say, let me list your house. I'm the best real estate agent. But the one says, well, I'll list your house because I wrote the book on real estate. He wrote a book on real estate, and that person ultimately got the contract or the listing for that customer, and it was because he positioned himself as an authority because he wrote the book on real estate. He may not be the best real estate agent in the world, but he wrote a book on it, and so he is perceived as that, I guess, was the story. Yeah.
And so my business is helping people write these books, I should say. And and thanks, guys, for the plug that I know you're going to include on the Facebook page. But yeah, the thing is, when you write a book, though, you have to reach a conclusion. You have to create a process. You have to self-examine what it is you've been doing and distinguish what makes you different than everyone else. So if you're, when they talk about real estate, one of the great phrases, the $1 million real estate system, you have to have a process, and you come to the client with that process articulated and on paper. Yeah, of course you'd want to do business with that person.
Yeah.
Because they've obviously thought about it.
Yep.
And really, it's not that you wrote the book, it's that you thought the book. The book is just proof. The book is just proof that you're smart enough to think it through and to create something that benefits the client. The book is just the evidence. The commodity is the process that you created, formalized, put down on paper, printed, and passed out to other people.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Well, Mike, we've had a great time chatting with you today. Like Jay said, I mean, we'd love to have you back on and maybe dive into some more of this book writing nonsense. But for today's topic, we've really enjoyed hearing from you and your perspective. So, what's the best way that people can get in touch with you if they want to write a book or learn more about anything you've said today?
Well, my website is getcatapulted.com. You can reach me at Mike at ulmer.ca if you want to go text or old school. Microsoft, Facebook Messenger works as well. I have days open. I'm spoken for on the 19th of August with 2 really good guys. They're going to give me help with something. But other than the 19th of August, I'm pretty well free.
And that's getcatapulted.com, right?
Yeah, getcatapulted.com.
Love it.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Mike. Well, we end every single episode with the same question, and that is, if you could choose one person, dead or alive, to represent you and your brand, who would it be and why?
It would be Jackie Robinson.
Good one.
Because Jackie Robinson obviously was a courageous man who had to be a better man than his critics. And that's I think that's the measure of the person. There are many phrases about critics, but to rise above that and to fight an unjust them, and to somehow keep your dignity and your comportment, and let your ability shine through. Anyone can be a dick. It takes something incredible to be a giant. And Jackie Robinson to me was a giant, so I would put my name beside his with great enthusiasm, although it doesn't belong there.
As
Great
would I.
answer.
Yeah,
Great answer.
that's awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you again, Mike. We really appreciate your time today, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was great fun.
Stick around, Mike. We'll be right back with you in 1 second, okay?
Okay.
Cheers.
All right. Awesome. Mike Ulmer on today's episode of the Merge Marketing Podcast. We went down a segue there. We just touched on it, but I really want to dive into that in a future episode, really, creating that book. And I think we can really dive into it with Mike. We kind of, we brushed along the surface talking about, print advertising and newspaper advertising and the inevitable demise of newspaper advertising, which is important. It's important to know. And it's crazy how quickly we're evolving that way, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So you heard it here first, the prediction 2025, 5 years from now, no more newspapers, or at the very least, maybe one or two. So we want to thank everybody for tuning into the Merge Marketing Podcast. Again, we're sorry for some of the technical difficulties, but in the COVID world that we're currently living in, this is how it has to be. So thanks a lot for putting up with it. Until next time, take care.
Hey, rate and subscribe while you're at it.